Welcome to the NLP Talks podcast, bringing you inspirational stories along with a good dose of potentially life-changing NLP strategies. I'm Laura Evans, multi-award-winning NLP trainer, and I'm on a mission to help you unleash your potential in business and life. I'm so glad you're here. Pull up a chair, listen in, and let's get started on revealing more about this transformational NLP toolkit. Hey, how are you? I hope you're well. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the NLP Talks podcast. I'm delighted to reveal today's guest is Marie Doherty. Now, Marie is a very experienced teacher in Ireland in her 33rd year, would you believe? And also parent to 3 children between the ages of 17 and 21. So she is well placed to help you and I understand how we can use NLP to empower children and young people. Now, in this episode, she explains how she came to NLP, not really for the techniques. Now, that's unusual if you're a regular listener to the podcast because all our guests usually rave about the techniques. But for Marie, it was not about the techniques. It was about the language skills that she wanted to learn. She was delighted when she found out about what we call the NLP Presuppositions, a set of principles or assumptions which are usually well overlooked by most practitioners. Today, you're going to get a masterclass in some of these. Marie has eliminated 2 words from her vocabulary as a result of her NLP practitioner training, regularly uses a 3rd one. And in this episode, she's going to share with you the transformational difference that has made to children's confidence and in terms of helping to foster a much more supportive learning environment in the classroom. Additionally, Marie also shares some amazing top tips for parents supporting their children through exam season and tips for young people themselves so that they can get themselves in the best possible place. So a very relevant episode to any parent, teacher, or anybody else interested in helping children or kids with NLP. So without further ado, let's go across to the episode where Marie talks about why and how she found NLP.
It was very much the communication. Recently, there have been so many children that have presented with anxiety, and it's becoming a really serious thing. And children are incredibly self-critical. And just listening to children talking about themselves, it was a language thing I went looking for initially. I kind of felt there was a different way that in some way we could teach them or model for them a different way of talking to themselves. That's kind of why I went looking. I went looking initially for a language thing. And it was as I looked, the NLP stuff started coming up again. I thought, but that was all in there. So it was the language really I went back to NLP for this time.
And I think it's a really important point because so many people, when they look to do NLP training, naturally get really excited about the techniques, and they are absolutely amazing. But what I love about what you've done, and we're going to come on to talk about, is much more the difference that you've seen because you've changed the way that you think and changed the way that you communicate and the way that you're helping other people communicate. So tell me a little bit then about your NLP journey. So you've done a couple of courses with us and you're going on obviously to do your master prac very, very soon. But what are some of the differences that you've seen for yourself? So we start off with you. What are some of the differences? So maybe think a little bit about what life was like before your training and what it's like now.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously when I was training, we used a lot of the techniques. And I mean, they have really made a huge difference in my life. Like all the self-belief. And it's only when you start doing the course and then there's a technique and you have to think up something that you need the technique for. And I suppose I sat quite smugly thinking, yeah, I don't need those. I'm fine. I've done. Oh boy, was I wrong. Because all those techniques, like the belief changes, the anchoring, all of those techniques have made such a difference in the way, again, self-talk, in the way I talk to myself and in the way I see life. And I think one of the biggest things for me was seeing, I would have taken things very personally, and somebody would say something and I would take it personally because I would think it was me. And just seeing it seeing things through a different lens made a huge difference because, it helped me realize that it's actually rarely about me. Yeah. They're seeing things from their own perspective. They're saying things. I'm hearing it through my filters and it's just not matching. And that was huge. That was really big for me.
And how has your NLP training helped you at home?
Oh, well, it's helped in so many ways. I mean, you think you've read the books and you've done the stuff and you know what you're doing as a parent. But when I look back on how the things I said to my own children and how I spoke to them, like it was just the idea that I expected them, first of all, to know what I meant from the way I was actually speaking to them. I mean, the biggest one and probably the simplest one, but the biggest one for me was I spent my whole life telling my children what I didn't want them to do. Like all the time, don't leave that there. Don't do that. Like, don't stay up late. Don't forget to take your washing down. It was all don't. Everything I said began with don't. Yeah. And it was only through NLP I discovered that actually, why don't you tell them what you want them to do? Why don't you actually just very simply say, put your washing down, leave that out in the kitchen, take the cups out of your bedroom, and that made a huge difference because they started hearing me. They actually started hearing what I wanted them to do and they did it.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Like we talk quite a lot about the word not, don't we? And for those people watching the podcast or listening to the podcast, let me just very briefly explain, because the unconscious mind, which is the part of our mind that controls our behavior, can't process the word not. So when you say to a child, don't run across the road, what's the very thing they do? Run across the road, because you've actually told them what you don't want them to do, and therefore they're going to do it. And in linguistic terms, what we say is rather than telling them what you don't want them to do, tell them what you do want to do. Now, we call it positive directionalized language, which all sounds very grand and very posh. But essentially what it means is, as you've just said, Marie, it's tell them what you want them to do. And that is, like you say, rather than saying, don't leave the dishes in the bedroom, say, remember to take the dishes downstairs. Instead of don't leave that bag there, tell them what do you want them to do, put your bag in your room. And it's a game changer, isn't it? For
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely.
Have your children noticed a difference? I know they're kind of teenagers, 17 to 21, so they're not little anymore, but have they said anything to you? Did they notice what you were doing and how it had changed?
Yeah, they did. I don't think they actually knew what it was that changed.
Yeah.
But they knew something had changed. I think they felt that I wasn't giving out as much, because don't is sort of a giving out thing. Whereas when I was just saying what I wanted done, it was a lot less threatening or confrontational. It was just conversation. Yeah. And it set the whole, like if it was in the evening, it set the whole evening up differently, because all of a sudden I wasn't going at them, to coin a phrase. Yeah. I was just explaining what I wanted. And that, like, I don't think any one of them would be able to say, oh yeah, this is what changed, but they all felt something changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really was. It was amazing.
And how did you notice the impact on the relationship that you have with them? So obviously communicating effectively is one thing, but I'm guessing actually that improved the quality of the relationship because it was less fraught. I mean, I don't know. I'm genuinely curious about the difference that it made.
Absolutely. It really did. And I discovered that when you start sentences with don't, you're really setting up for a row. Unconsciously, you were setting up for a row, and then that just changes the energy of the whole day.
Yeah.
Whereas when you just say, remember to take, you're not confronting people, so therefore they don't feel the need to defend themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when you say, don't leave your dishes upstairs, that comes across as confrontational, and I found that they then became defensive.
Yeah.
And started going back and like there was excuses and then all of a sudden when you're just saying take your dishes downstairs, there was no need to come up with excuses because you weren't confronting them, and that changed the relationship completely. Like that was huge.
And I guess that also leads on. I know one of the other things that you've also become much more aware of is the word should.
Oh, absolutely. And that's across, and you know, that's even with my own self-talk.
Really?
Yes, that's with everything. Like, it's only when you stop and think about it, which during the training made me, like, it doesn't even really mean anything. And again, it's equally confrontational, because if you're talking to a child and you say, yeah, but you should be doing your homework, they're immediately going to come back and defend themselves, because that's human nature.
Yeah.
So when you take the should out of it, you take an awful lot of the confrontation out of it as well.
So would you say that refraining from the word not and refraining from the word should, would you say they're two of the biggest things that you've taken away?
Absolutely. And that's across the board. That's for me personally, at home, at work, everything. I mean, no, I'm not saying I never use the word not and I never use the word should, but I'm an awful lot more conscious. And if I say, I mean, we all use the word should, but if I find myself getting into the shoulds, I'm very quick to sort of pull back and kind of go, okay, that's getting, where let's go a different way.
Yeah. But it's true though, isn't it? I mean, like you quite rightly say, so many of us use the word should to try and motivate ourselves, let alone motivating someone else. You should go to bed. I mean, how many times have we all sat on the sofa at night, and there's another episode of Netflix or whatever we're watching that's going to be, I really should go to bed, but I'm just going to watch one. No, I really should go and tidy up the kitchen, but I'm just going to watch one more.
But that brings the guilt in.
Say again.
That brings the guilt in, because once you say should, you're still going to watch the Netflix, but you're going to watch it feeling guilty. And I mean, if you're going to watch it anyway, guilt gets you nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that you've also had some really interesting results using another word. So it's like a masterclass in language, this. So we've talked about not and the benefit of avoiding that. We've talked about the word should and the benefit of avoiding that for ourselves and others. The power of yet, I know, is also something that you're really big on, that we'd also covered on the course. So tell everybody a little bit about how you're using that.
Well, I use yet a lot, like hugely, and I try and use it at home and at school.
Yes.
Because I find that people are inclined to, when you say you can't do something, for example, you can't do it.
Yeah.
But just by putting in that little tiny word at the end, you're opening the door to the fact that, okay, maybe sometime I will be able to do it, which changes your whole energy around it. It changes everything about it. And I find in school, it is huge, because children no longer can't do something. They just haven't got there yet. And you can see them sitting up taller. You can see them being kind of, okay, it's really hard, but maybe I actually can do that. It's really empowering for children to sort of put that little tiny word at the end of the sentence.
And do you find that you're at school when you're talking to the children, do you find that you're just like dropping yet in on the end of some of their statements? Because that's what I used to do all the time. I can't do that, miss. And yet. And do you find that happens?
Absolutely. And I find now that children will say, I can't do that. And then they'll kind of look up at you out of the side of their eye and go, yet. It's nearly like they put it in now because they know that I'm going to put it in. So it's this grudging yet. And then they go on, but you know that in some way that's what's in their head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And awareness is the first step, right? For all of us. Doesn't matter if you're an 11-year-old, child at school, or you're a teenager at home, or you're a parent, or anybody, we all start with awareness. And I'm the first to say, I'm not perfect. Even with all the training I have, I still slip up. Because we've got to remember that the majority of language, some say up to 98% of language, is unconscious. We open our mouth and the words just roll out. But if we can reduce that from 98% unconscious and we start becoming more conscious, look the difference that it makes to children, to relationships, and to ourselves. So let's talk a little bit about school. So obviously you're a teacher. You have been for over 30 years. Fair play to you. So a long time. So you've got huge amounts of experience as a teacher, teaching primary school children. And I'm curious, obviously, because obviously, some people are teachers, some people are not. But I'm curious, when you are in front of a group of young people, a group of children, that must be quite daunting, right? Probably not for you with all of your experience, but I think if I was going to be stood in front of them, I'd be like, oh my goodness me. So, and obviously, in traditional NLP coaching, we'd be doing techniques, but you can't do that at school. It's not ethical, it's not right, and you would never do that. So your language skills are all you've got, really, aren't they, as a teacher? Like, you've got a group of young people, all of whom have their own mind, all of whom that don't want to be told what to do, all of whom are in an environment that, let's be honest, probably they don't want to be in. And, there you are trying to orchestrate this group to help them to learn. I mean, like, I'm probably painting the worst picture ever, but for me, that from where I'm at, and I'm like, that's kind of how I would see it, right? So over the years, I'm sure you've developed all sorts of tactics and ways of dealing with young people that enables you to have the success I know you've had in your career. So with that all said, I'm curious that, when you came and started learning NLP with me, I'm curious as to what were those light bulb moments in terms of your role as a teacher, but also your role in terms of how you communicated differently with the children. I know it's a massive question, but over to you.
It is a massive question. Well, in the same way that my communication with my own children changed, dropping the not, like telling the children at school what I wanted them to do and taking out the shoulds and putting in the yets was huge. I also took out the try. I also very much focus on not asking them to try.
So explain that. Because if someone's not understanding or never done training, they might not know how important that word is.
Well, like when you put in try, you are opening the door to failure. You're opening the door to not being able to do it. And you're sort of giving children a kind of a back door out when you put in try, because, oh yeah, I tried, couldn't do it. That's grand, fine, end of story. I try not to use the word try when I'm asking them to do something. I very much asked them to do it.
Yeah.
But there was loads of other things as well. So like for me as a teacher, learning that the meaning of the communication was the results I got. So like, just because I ask children to do something doesn't necessarily mean that's what they hear or that's what they understand. And realizing that has been huge for me as a teacher, because like there are days you stand and you ask them to do something. And I mean, I have been in the past guilty of saying, am I actually speaking a different language? And do you know what? I actually was. It was all English, but the words I was saying weren't meaning the same for them as what I intended them to mean. And that was big, because it sort of gave me the thing that if they're not seeming to understand, then I have to change the way I'm saying it, because their filters aren't just taking it in the same way. The other thing that was huge for me was the people are not their behaviors. Because I think sometimes as teachers, as people, we see the behaviors and it becomes that. And just stopping when you're in the middle of something serious and realizing that that person in front of you is a person. They've done something they shouldn't have done, but you know what? It's just a thing they've done. That was very, very big for me. And the other main one was everybody's doing the best they can with the resources they have. And as a teacher, at times you'll be doing something and somewhere deep inside you think they're deliberately not doing this. Like, how could you not know what I want them to do? And just to step back and go, do you know what? They're doing the best they can with the resources they have, and realizing, I suppose it's a respect for the model of the world too, realizing that, nobody knows what anybody comes out of in the morning. Their world is a different world to my world. And, what they bring into me in the morning, maybe they've had a row with mommy about dishes up the stairs, and that's what they've come in with. And that as well, I think it made me a lot more understanding.
And if anybody has been trained in NLP and is listening to you talk, we will recognize that those principles that you have just rattled off, of course, are the presuppositions of NLP. And I think one of the things I admire so much about you is that you've taken what is one of the very first things that we teach on an NLP practitioner course. And if I'm really honest, I think sometimes I share the presuppositions with people and say the NLP presuppositions are a convenient set of assumptions that we do well to take on board. And I share how if I'm communicating with somebody and it doesn't go well, often I think they provide some insight and some reflection for us. But most people, if I'm really honest, probably just pay lip service to them and go, yeah, Laura, yeah, great, right. When are we going to get to the techniques? And they miss the value that sits behind such an empowering set of life principles, really, that help guide us all. And I just love how you so elegantly explain them in easy to understand ways. There's not NLP jargon, that is just really simply about, do you know what, as a teacher, this is some of the things I noticed. And I don't know about you, but I found that the presuppositions almost gave me a language to explain things that I'd always known, but I couldn't articulate very well. And then all of a sudden I'm there's these principles go, oh yes, absolutely. How did I not know that? Well, the truth is you probably did. It's just that we didn't have a way to express that, and I just think they're amazing. The presuppositions that you've just talked about in terms of your role, with that, I just think, like that model of the world, that's all about empathy, isn't it? Like understanding, like you say, you don't know what the children have been through before they come into the room. It's the same as if I was in a business meeting at work. I don't know what's happened to those people before they walk into the room, and having that empathy and perhaps not getting quite so rolled up ourselves because of other people's behavior, I remember someone saying to me years ago, when I was doing my trainings, like the behavior that people demonstrate is just behavior. It doesn't make them a bad person. It doesn't make them a naughty child. It doesn't make them any less of a person. It's just that behavior. And I just love the way you've just explained that actually as a teacher, your job was to observe that behavior and think, okay, so if my message is not landing, how else could I communicate differently so that it did? And you're like living proof of that in terms of how you've transformed your relationships at home as much as how you've transformed those relationships with the children. And I just think you're just like a living, breathing example of something that I think in NLP a lot of people ignore and go, that's not a technique, I'm not interested in that. And whereas actually you've got such value from it, which I think is phenomenal.
To be honest, from a day-to-day point of view, the presuppositions in the language, I think you could stop after that and you would have such an amazing resource. Because like you use techniques, they're once off. The other stuff you use every single day, like really every single day. And whether you're aware of it or not, you still use it every single day.
Yeah, because it changes your outlook, doesn't it?
Yes.
It changes the way that you approach and interact with other people. I think that's the game changer. So talk to me a little bit about the children then. So I know that obviously you took away great value for yourself, and I'm sure any teachers that are watching this will be able to relate to what you've just described. But you also use some of these, I call them life principles, approaches. I mean, officially they're called assumptions, but you actually found that useful with your interactions with the children. And I believe you created some lessons or some concepts around it. So share with everybody what you did.
Well, I took some of them and I actually put them on the board. We talked about them. I suppose I taught them to the children. Things like that they're in charge of their mind and therefore their results. That thing of taking responsibility and the respect for other people's model of the world. I think it's important that children also realize that not everybody has the same experiences as them. So not everybody's going to react to things the same way that they do. And just that understanding that just because, I would have grown up personally in a house where we sort of insulted one another, but it was all in good humor. And children come and do that and don't realize that other children don't have that experience. So just realizing that changes the way they behave with one another. A huge one in my classroom was there's no failure, just feedback.
Yeah, talk about that, because that's massive for children.
Children, I don't know where they learn it. And I ask them and they don't know where they learn it. There's this fear of making mistakes. There's this fear of doing something in case it's wrong. And we have very much worked a lot on the fact that, it's wrong. Ideally, it wouldn't be wrong, but it is wrong. Why is it wrong? What makes it wrong? And what can you do not to make it wrong the next time, so that you're using the mistake to inform what you do the next time, and it won't be wrong. And giving children the permission to do something wrong because they're going to learn from it. It's very empowering for children, because you're taking the fear out of it. They're no longer afraid to be wrong, because when they're wrong, they're saying, yeah, but why is it wrong? Like, what's wrong with it? What do I have to do to make it right? And all of a sudden, I mean, to me, that's actual learning. The rest is just by the way. So that one is huge. And that one, like, is referred to in my room every day of the week. Do you know, somebody else.
Do you find the children quoting them back at you because you?
Oh God, yeah. They won't say there's no failure, only feedback, but they will say often, but why is it wrong? Like, what's wrong about it? What should I have done? Do you know? And to me, asking that question is really learning. I mean, that's true learning, because, and I don't know where they get this idea that you can't make mistakes, like that you'll be scolded if it's wrong. But no, it's taken a long time to break that, but they are beginning now to sort of say, but why is it wrong? What did I do wrong? Let me see yours. How is yours different to mine? What's wrong with it? Do you know? So yeah, that one is huge. I mean, if you were to teach one in a classroom, that's the one I think you should teach.
Yeah. Which other ones did you share with them?
People have all the resources they need.
Yeah.
Because children are very inclined to go to somebody else. No, that's not to say they shouldn't go to somebody else, because sometimes that is your resource to be able to ask somebody else. But it's that idea that no matter what happens, I have the resources to fix it. I know where to go. I know how to do it. And again, that's leaving them with the power to kind of do things in their own life and not have to depend totally on other people. The respect for, I said about the respect for other people's model of the world, but also everybody's doing the best they can. I think children need to hear that too. I think they need to realize that, do you know what? Sometimes we all mess up, and that's okay, because we are doing the best they can. And that whole thing then allows them to see, well, okay, if I do the best I can, then that's okay. Do you know? So a lot of those were very kind of empowering for the children, because they sort of allow them to live in the world and not to have to be something they're not, because you're allowed to do that.
Yeah. And it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I guess some of us will have been brought up in families where, you know, we're not allowed to make mistakes, you know, that it's, if you make a mistake, you are scolded and there's consequences for that. And you know, I remember as a child, you know, coming back late, you know, one night after the curfew I'd been given. I mean, this is obviously before mobile phones and things like that. And oh my goodness, did I get a row, you know? And I understand now as an adult, I can understand how terrified my parents must have been when I didn't come home. And in their head now as an adult, I can imagine some of the things that might have gone through their head. But actually, if there'd been a conversation about actually helping me to understand as a child that and what was going through their heads, rather than, you know, click round the ear, get into your bedroom and you sit in on your bedroom for an hour and get bored, and then you like find something to occupy yourself with. And is that really learning? Is that really teaching a child anything? And I'm not a parent, and I'm sure some parents listen to this go, Laura, if you had children, you wouldn't be saying that. But I just think your point is so valid, which is actually what is learning and what is it that we want young people and children to do? And some of those principles you've just shared, I'm like, yeah, if the children of today grow up knowing that it's okay to make a mistake, and it's, you know, I remember someone saying to me years ago, you just like fail once, that's fine, but ask yourself the question, how do I do it differently next time? You know, what do I need to learn about that so it doesn't happen again? And, you know, I mean, if you're still making the same mistake on repeat, you know, 4 or 5 times, then come on now. Like, but even then, what conversation do you have? Do you have the conversation about taking responsibility? If you know, it's like that famous quote, isn't it? If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Yeah. So if you want a different outcome, then you know, you have to do something different. And that's as you say, that's learning, is learning how to do it differently. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we've looked at what are called in all the best textbooks that famous failures.
Okay.
So we've looked at people like Thomas Edison, who it was his 121st attempt that made a light bulb. And like telling children that, and he said himself he found 120 ways that didn't work. And pointing that out, that he didn't fail, he just like children their minds are blown by that one.
Yeah.
Do you know, that's a huge one for them. And that whole thing as well about modeling, about if you want to be able to do something, find somebody who can do it. What do they do? Do you know, we do that with reading all the time. What do good readers do? Yeah, what do good readers do? If we could find out what good readers do, then we could try and do them, and then we would be the same. And it allows them to see that no matter what you want to do, you can do it. You just have to find the way to do it.
Yeah. And again, you know, I mean, I struggle with reading at school. I mean, you know, my primary school was, you know, quite challenging for me in terms of maths and reading and numbers and all of that kind of stuff. And like, even if a teacher had said that, okay, well, let's find somebody that's good at doing it and let's find out how they do it. I mean, you know, again, explained brilliantly, but that's NLP modeling, which is find someone that's an expert or a successful at doing something and find out how they do it and then see if you can replicate it. All right, it might not be exactly the same, but you're going to improve your ability to do it by finding someone that can do it. And I bet you've seen so many light bulbs go off in children's eyes as you've started to say, well, how could we find out about how to do that?
Absolutely. And children love that, because all of a sudden it's okay not to be good at it. And again, you're back to the yet, because all of a sudden you're finding, you know, you're acknowledging the fact that it's not even that you're not good at it. You're acknowledging the fact that you want to be better. And then you're taking action. You're actually going out there with a plan and you're doing something about it. And whether or not you get better at it doesn't really matter, because what matters is you went and you found somebody and you tried and you put the effort in. And to me, that's all it's about. Yeah. You know, it's about knowing that I can always change what's real for me now. I can always change that because I'm in control of it. And I think if children realize that, they can really do anything they want. Yeah.
It's like almost like, I mean, taking reading as the example, right? You either can read or you can't read. It's very black and white, isn't it? It's either I'm not a good reader or I am a good reader. And actually, if they became 1% better or 2% better, they're still better. And they're learning and they're moving in the right direction, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, education has been very black and white. You know, it has been like, oh, she's good at that and she's good at that and she's good at that. End of story, no more. And it's just that letting them see that, yeah, you can change how you are. You can become better. Yeah. And as well, the comparing bit. It doesn't really matter what somebody else is like at it. You can still become better, not to be like them, but to be better for you.
Oh, I wish you'd been my primary school teacher. I'd be like, oh my goodness, where were you when I needed a really good primary teacher to teach me these things? But as you say though, but this is the life stuff that, and I know you're not based here in the UK, you're based in Ireland, but this is the stuff, right, which the education system simply doesn't teach our young people. You know, I mean, like, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, it's all bad, but you just think actually if we could resource these children up to be more resilient, to have a more positive mindset, to not be so hard on themselves. You know, it's absolutely massive, isn't it? I'm conscious of time, as always, on this podcast, and I go, oh my goodness, look at the time. Now, at the point of recording, it's exam season, and a lot of parents and a lot of children will be, I'm sure, preparing for or, you know, thinking about the exams that are shortly coming down the road to them. Now, obviously, I know you've done all your NLP training with me, but I also know you've got lots of other skills as well as a coach, helping, you know, parents and teenagers and things like that. So I'm just wondering if we could get some tips out of you to share with everybody, particularly around exam and exam season, because again, not being a parent myself, I can imagine exam season is quite a fraught time at home for everybody concerned. So let's start with the parents. So if there was a parent listening to this podcast episode that has one of their children going through exam period, if you could give them a few top tips, what would you say?
Well, the first thing would be don't tell them what they should do. Take the shoulds out of it. You should be studying. They know they should be studying. And if they're not, there's a good reason for it. And somebody telling you should be studying when in your heart and soul you should be studying is not going to help things. And it's certainly not going to make you study. In fact, teenagers, it'll probably make you do the other thing. Just because, don't tell me what I should be doing. So I think that's a very big one. I think respecting their model of the world is another one. I mean, we all learn differently, and sometimes as parents, particularly if we've been through education ourselves, we're inclined to think we know how people should be studying. And there's the shoulds again, and you might be giving advice and saying, no, but write the stuff out. Everybody knows you have to write. That doesn't work for everybody. And I think allowing them to find their own way of studying and what works for them, like respecting what works for them. Like if they need music in the room. Personally, I could never study with music, but I know my own children do. And just respecting that and not kind of going, but you can't study with that noise. How can you study with that noise? That's not possible. So just respecting what they find works for them is very important as well. And I suppose one that everybody is doing the best they can. Don't compare. Maybe your neighbour's child is studying 10 hours a day, never leaves the books, and your child's studying half an hour. Comparing is getting you nowhere. And realistically, your child mightn't be studying as much as you think they should, or as much as maybe they would get them the best results. But what they're doing is they're finding their own way. So they may not be using sort of their intelligence, but they are doing the best they can. So I think that makes for a calmer house. It makes for a house that's going to lend itself more to studying.
Yeah. Yes. I think, do you know what? If I'd had an environment where, that was going on at times, then that would have made such a difference. But, I also understand, like, as adults, we think we know the best way, right? And so many of us trust our own personal experience. So I can totally understand how, someone would say, well, that's not how I learn. Like you say, how could you learn with music on in the background? Like I can, why are you not sat there writing out all of your revision notes, and all that kind of stuff. But I guess, again, I'm not in the education system, but I'm guessing there's lots of different ways that you share with young people about how they could revise and how they could learn. And I guess it's supporting them to find that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So amazing. I think they're great tips. I'm sure any parent listening to this podcast will be like, right, Marie, I'm on it. That's some of the stuff I'm going to aspire to implement in my household. If a young person is listening to this themselves and they are going through this exam season, what kind of tips would you give them in terms of their mindset and getting themselves through this?
Well, the first one, and it's not a tip, I will do 3 others, is be patient with your parents. Respect their model of the world too, because they are coming at it with the right intentions. They just don't realize it's not right for you. So I think sometimes, young people can be more understanding than maybe their parents. So that would be a big one. And to go back to there's no failure, only feedback. It seems like the end of the world. It's actually not. Yes, put your heart and soul into them, but there are other ways of doing everything. So take what happens. Once you've done your best, take what happens, and it's not failure. If it's not what you want it to be, if you don't achieve what you want, it's not failure. Learn from it. Find another way to do it. I would be a big believer. I do a lot of breath work. And I think breathing, like people say, we all breathe. We do. But I think if you can sort of take control of your breath, even in an exam, to breathe into your stomach and to really, really, really slowly breathe out will calm your vagus nerve and you will perform better. And that thing of going into an exam, or even when you're studying and none of it's going in, to just stop and close your eyes and breathe into your stomach and just really, really, really slowly breathe out. Even you do it a couple of times and then go back to the studying.
I'm going to try it now while you're talking.
And the last one.
So you breathe right. So you focus on your diaphragm and your belly when you're breathing in.
Put your hand on your belly.
Yeah.
And breathe into your hand. And then really slowly breathe out. Focus on making it really slow. Because when you extend the exhale, you're telling your body that there's nothing to be afraid of. It just immediately calms you down. And you can do that in an exam and nobody sees you. Like, it's not that you have to stand up and do stuff. You're just breathing. Put your pencil down and just do it. And it really will, because a lot of the time when people don't perform in exams, it's not because they don't know the stuff, and it's not because they haven't the work done. It's because they panic. So to have a strategy that can calm the panic, all the stuff that you've learned can come out then.
Yeah, that's so simple. Like, I can already feel my heart rate's just dropped a little bit, and I can just feel like, wow, okay. Yeah,
you're telling your body it's safe. That's what you're doing. You're just saying, I'm safe. It's okay. It will be fine.
Yeah. I love that. So hand on my stomach, breathe right into the depths of my stomach, and then just breathe out as slowly as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you do it twice, it makes all the difference. But just once is all you need. That's really all you need to change the state of your body completely.
Wow. I mean, that's the right mind-body connection right there, isn't it? Right? Deciding that you're going to take control of those feelings and doing the exercise to calm yourself down. And then you think more clearly. I hope whoever listens to this, that's a young person, and if you're an adult or a parent listening to this, share this with your young person that's going through their exams. Because like you say, Marie, even if you just put your pencil down in the exam just for a few seconds and just have a breath as you read that question, and you feel your heart racing, thinking, oh, I can't do this, just stop and breath. Oh my goodness, that's an amazing tip.
Yeah, I love that one. I do that all the time.
Yeah. Cool. And anything else for the young people going through the process? Anything else, top tips? Because you've been a parent, you're a teacher, you've seen all your children go through exams, so anything else that you would share?
The other one I use, and I use it a lot even in primary school for children who struggle to come into school, is having something. Now, I usually have a stone that I've given children, and just keep it in your pocket. And just to put your hand in your pocket and touch it, and just be aware, like if it's smooth or if it's rough, just for a second, to take your mind completely off what, in some ways it is like NLP anchoring without doing the whole, but it just stops you letting your mind get carried away, and it distracts you and it brings you back. So just having something that you can touch and know, okay, I know what I'm doing. I can do this.
Oh, brilliant. I just think they're amazing tips. And I hope lots of people share this podcast episode, in terms of parents and children and exams. And it's just absolutely brilliant. Now, again, I'm just looking at the clock. I'm like, oh my goodness, what else can we squeeze in? So we'll do one more thing. So I know that obviously you're a hugely experienced teacher, and I know that you're, really doing great things with young people. And I know that your coaching business is focused on teenagers and mothers and parenting and all of that stuff. But I'm just wondering, is there an NLP technique? We talked a lot about language today, but is there an NLP technique that maybe you've used with some of your teenage clients to help them?
Yeah, I think the one that I've used most, and I feel is the most useful, particularly for teenagers, is anchoring. It's giving them maybe a calm anchor that they can use, because there is so much pressure and stress and anxiety on teenagers at the minute. To have something that they can touch that will bring that calm down, like they can use that all the time. So I think if there was one technique that I would give a young person, it would certainly be anchoring, and I found that it's the one that really works.
Yeah. Is there an example? Obviously, I don't want you to breach any confidentiality, but is there an example of a teenage client that you've worked with, and how they were before and how they were after they'd worked with you and you'd done some anchoring?
I had a teenage client who had anxiety around going to school.
Yeah.
And who struggled going to school. And we worked with the anchor. We did anchor calm. We anchored calm into the little finger.
Yeah.
And he found then that going into school, just touching the two fingers together, it didn't, it's not a miracle worker. It didn't make them like school any better. But what it did was it allowed him to go in and to be in school and to, if things got stressful in school, to regulate in school. And just being able to go in the door for some children is huge. Just having that. And it's very simple. Again, we anchored it to the little finger so he could have his hand in his pocket. And and knowing that he had that ability helped him do loads of other things as well, because he knew that if things got bad, he had that ability.
I love it. I could talk to you all day, and you've given so many great tips here for teachers and parents and young people. And I genuinely hope that this episode goes on to help lots of people all the way around the world, wherever our listeners are listening from. We have listeners in over 100 countries around the world. And, it doesn't matter which country you live in or what education system you're in, the kinds of things you've been talking about today, I know are going to make a massive difference. Marie, if anybody wanted to reach out to you and make contact with you, if they had any questions about the episode or they were interested in working with you, what would be the best way for them to get hold of you?
Well, I'm on both Facebook and Instagram. I'm Marie Doherty Wellness. And I also have a website, which is mariedohertywellness.ie.
Amazing. And thank you so much, because you've been so generous with your knowledge and your expertise. And like I say, I know it's going to be a massive help to a lot of people. Now, as always with the podcast episode, we get to the quick fire round at the very, very end. And Marie has absolutely no idea what questions I'm going to ask her. So genuinely, and I say this on every episode, people go, are you going to tell me? No, it's supposed to be a surprise at the end. So she's got no idea what I'm about to ask her. So let me see how we do. So Marie, here we go. First question. If you could take one thing to a desert island with you, what would you take?
A book, but I don't know which one, because there's thousands I could take.
I love it. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you want to have coffee with?
Oh my goodness. I would have coffee with Rosa Parks.
Nice. Yes. Nice. What, trying to pick something else here. I'm reading some of these and I'm going, that's a bit difficult. What compelled you to become a coach? What's like your mission, your thing that made you go, I want to help other people?
Because I feel people are making do. I feel people are settling for when they shouldn't be. Everybody has the potential to do and be whatever they want. And if I can help people do that, I just see so many people settling for, it's all, and when you ask somebody how was their day and they say same old, that.
I love it. That is a very good reason to become a coach, to help people get out of that mindset. Marie, thank you so much for your time. You've been so generous with your time and your wisdom. Thank you so much. I know it will help an awful lot of people. Thank you also to the people that have watched us live today. It's been lovely to have you here. And also, of course, everybody that's listening around the world on the podcast. Please do reach out to Marie if you think she can help you in any way. I know she would be delighted to help. If you are interested in coming and doing some NLP training with us, the interesting thing about Marie here is actually Marie did all her training with me online. So she has not once set foot in our training room in Cardiff yet. That will change later this year. But, so if you're listening to this podcast episode anywhere around the world, as long as you can get online and you can get on Zoom, then you'd be very welcome to come and train with us. And I know that you'd have a great experience with us. And Marie's vigorously nodding her head for those of you that are listening to the podcast and can't see her. So yes, do have a think about that. As always, you can go to our website, unleashyourpotential.org.uk. So take care, everybody, and look after yourselves. And I will see you on the next episode.